Admiral Cathax of the Galactic Confederation had seen many first contacts in his 3-century career, but none quite like this. The primitive Earth vessel approaching his flagship looked like it had been cobbled together from spare parts and dreams. Its hull a patchwork of materials that made his sensor officers wince. But it wasn't the ship's questionable construction that would make this first contact legendary. It was what lurked in its research bay. Dr. Sarah Chen hadn't planned on becoming humanity's first line of defense against hostile aliens. As the leading expert in extremophile evolution at the Mariana Research Station, her concerns typically centered around grant proposals and peer reviews. Now, as she stood in the cramped laboratory aboard humanity's first faster-than-light vessel, she watched her specimens with growing unease. The tardigrades in their containment units weren't ordinary water bears. They were the result of her decade-long research into enhanced extremophile adaptation. Using CRISPR and quantum genetic manipulation, she had pushed the already impressive survival capabilities of tardigrades to theoretical limits. The creatures could now survive in pure vacuum indefinitely, metabolize virtually any organic material, and even process radiation as an energy source. Dr. Chen, Captain Rodriguez's voice crackled over the intercom. Our guests are requesting a tour of the science facilities. Please prepare for visitors. Sarah straightened her lab coat, trying to look presentable despite having spent the last 3 days monitoring her specimens during the experimental FTL jump. Understood, Captain. Though I should mention that the containment units are still calibrating to the new spatial conditions. The laboratory doors hissed open, revealing Captain Rodriguez escorting 3 aliens that looked like a cross between mantises and supercomputers. Admiral Cathax led the group, his crystalline sensory arrays shifting colors in what Sarah would later learn was intense scientific curiosity. This is our primary research facility, Rodriguez explained, where Dr. Chen studies Earth's most resilient life forms. Cathax's translator hummed. Fascinating. Your species achieves faster-than-light travel and chooses to bring microscopic research specimens on your first journey. Most races prioritize weapons. Sarah stepped forward, professional pride overtaking her initial nervousness. These aren't just any specimens, Admiral. These tardigrades represent the pinnacle of terrestrial adaptation. They can survive conditions that would kill virtually any other life form. As if on cue, a warning light flashed on one of the containment units. Sarah's eyes widened as she realized what was happening. The quantum genetic modifications were responding to the lingering FTL field effects in ways she hadn't predicted. Everyone out, she shouted, but it was too late. The containment unit's force field flickered and failed, releasing a cloud of microscopic enhanced tardigrades into the ship's air filtration system. In the chaos that followed, no one noticed that the tardigrades were already changing, adapting to their new environment with unprecedented speed. By the time the ship's systems detected the breach, the creatures had already begun establishing colonies throughout the vessel's infrastructure. Admiral Cathax's security team immediately raised their weapons, but Rodriguez stepped between them and Sarah. This isn't an attack, he insisted, though sweat beaded on his forehead. Dr. Chen's research is purely scientific. Cathax's sensory arrays shifted to a deep purple. Your first contact mission brought experimental biological specimens of unknown capability. This could be considered an act of war. Sarah's hands flew over her diagnostic console. Admiral, please. These creatures are harmless to sapient life. They're microscopic, peaceful scavengers that... She trailed off as new data scrolled across her screen. The tardigrades were exhibiting unprecedented changes, forming complex colonial structures within the ship's systems. What happened next would change the course of galactic history. As a pirate vessel, having tracked the first contact meeting with the intent to raid what they assumed would be an easy target, dropped out of FTL nearby. Humanity's accidentally released defenders would show just how harmless they could be. The water bears were about to go to war, and the galaxy wasn't ready for what they would become. Captain Vexstar of the notorious pirate vessel Shadow Claw had pulled off countless successful raids in his career. This one should have been simple, a primitive species first contact vessel would be easy pickings. As his ship dropped out of FTL, weapons charged and ready, he couldn't have known he was about to encounter something that would become the stuff of space pirates' nightmares. "Sir, targeting systems locked on both vessels," his weapons officer reported. "The Earth ship's defenses are practically non-existent." Vextar's mandibles clicked in satisfaction. "Send the standard surrender demand. Let's see how these humans handle their first space robbery." But before the transmission could be sent, something bizarre appeared on their sensor readings. Tiny energy signatures were spreading across their hull like a living constellation. The ship's artificial intelligence began reporting system anomalies throughout all decks. In the Earth vessel's laboratory, Dr. Sarah Chen stared at her monitoring equipment in disbelief. Her enhanced tardigrades hadn't just survived in the ship's systems. They were thriving, evolving, and now communicating. The quantum modifications had accelerated their adaptation far beyond her wildest theories. "Captain Rodriguez," she called over the comm, "you need to see this. The tardigrades are forming a collective intelligence using the ship's quantum processors as synaptic pathways. They're not just surviving in our systems, they're becoming part of them." Rodriguez had bigger concerns. "Doctor, we have a pirate vessel bearing down on us. Whatever your water bears are doing, unless they can fight off a heavily armed." He never finished the sentence. On their screens, they watched in amazement as swarms of microscopic defenders launched themselves through space toward the pirate vessel. The tardigrades had adapted to use the ship's quantum field generators to create their own propulsion method. Aboard the Shadowclaw, chaos erupted. Systems began failing in cascade as the microscopic invaders penetrated their hull through maintenance ports and sensor arrays. But unlike typical system failures, these followed a pattern, a deliberate, coordinated attack. "Sir," the Shadowclaw's engineer screamed over the comm, "something's in the computer core. It's rewriting our systems. But that's impossible. There's no wireless connection, no data breach. It's like the computers themselves are evolving." Admiral Cathax watched the scene unfold with his sensory arrays cycling through colors never before seen in diplomatic encounters. The tardigrades had merged with both ships' quantum systems, creating a bizarre hybrid of biological and technological evolution that defied conventional science. The pirate ship's weapons powered down. Their engines went idle. And then, most incredibly, their communication system activated with a message that stunned everyone who read it. "Unauthorized aggression, DETCTD. Initiating peacekeeping protocols. This vessel is no UNDRTARVDIJRAD protection, initiative." Dr. Chen's voice shook as she translated the data streaming across her console. They're using our computer systems to learn. The quantum modifications allowed them to interface with our technology, and they've decided to protect us. They're treating the ships like their natural habitat and responding to threats just as they would in their original microscopic ecosystems. The Shadowclaw's crew found themselves locked out of all critical systems. Their ship now responded only to a new command structure, one created by microscopic defenders who had decided that peace and order were necessary for their new space-based ecosystem to thrive. Captain Rodriguez turned to Admiral Cathax, whose security team had lowered their weapons in shock. "Admiral, I swear we didn't plan this. Though I have to admit, as far as defense systems go." Cathax's translator took a moment to process before responding. "In 3 centuries of space exploration, I have never, Dr. Chen, your harmless specimens have just effectively created an entirely new form of space warfare. Or perhaps, space peacekeeping." Sarah watched her readings with a mixture of pride and terror. "Not warfare, Admiral. They're establishing a symbiotic relationship with our technology. In nature, tardigrades are peaceful unless threatened. They've just scaled up their behavior to a cosmic level." As news of the incident spread across galactic communications channels, the pirate vessel's fate became a warning to others. The tardigrades hadn't harmed the crew. They'd simply rendered their weapons inoperable and transmitted their location to authorities. More importantly, they had begun to spread hitching rides on passing ships, establishing colonies in space stations, and creating an interconnected network of microscopic guardians throughout human-traveled space. The age of the water bears had begun, and the galaxy's criminal elements were about to learn that sometimes the smallest defenders were the most formidable. 6 months after the first contact incident, Dr. Sarah Chen stood before a holographic display in the Galactic Science Academy's main amphitheater. The room was packed with researchers from 100 different species, all eager to understand how microscopic Earth creatures had revolutionized space travel security. As you can see, Sarah explained, highlighting a section of the display showing a space station's internal systems, the enhanced tardigrades have developed a complex hierarchical structure. They're not just surviving in space, they're creating elaborate colonies that integrate seamlessly with our technology. The footage showed swarms of tardigrades moving through the station's quantum processors like schools of fish, their modified genetics allowing them to process and respond to digital information as if it were natural environmental data. What had started as a containment breach had evolved into something unprecedented in galactic history. Dr. Zixtal, the leading xenobiologist from the Centauri Collective, raised an appendage. But how do they distinguish between legitimate vessels and hostile ones? The reports suggest near-perfect accuracy in threat assessment. Sarah switched to a new display showing neural pattern analyses. They've developed what we call quantum empathy. The genetic modifications allowing them to interface with our technology also let them process ship activity patterns, aggressive behavior, weapons charging, unauthorized access attempts. These all register as threats to their colony ecosystem. In the back of the room, Admiral Cathax watched with his sensory arrays shifting between fascination and concern. The tardigrades had spread far beyond anyone's expectations, establishing presence in nearly every major spaceport and trade route in human-occupied space. Meanwhile, aboard the abandoned mining station KX-419, now known as Haven Colony by the tardigrade researchers, Dr. Marcus Wong led a team studying the creature's most remarkable evolutionary leap yet. The station had become the largest known tardigrade colony, and what they were observing there defied explanation. Dr. Chen, Marcus's excited voice came through the conference call, interrupting her presentation. You need to see this. They're building something. The amphitheater's holographic display switched to a live feed from Haven Colony. The assembled scientists gasped. Thousands of tardigrades were working in concert, using modified maintenance nanobots to construct complex structures within the station's quantum core. Are they creating new technology? Someone in the audience whispered. Sarah zoomed in on the construction. Not exactly. They're modifying existing systems to be more efficient, more secure. They're essentially turning our space stations into living organisms, with themselves serving as both maintenance crew and immune system. But it wasn't just their engineering feats that had the scientific community buzzing. The tardigrades had begun leaving messages, complex mathematical equations and improvement suggestions embedded in station logs. They weren't just protecting human space, they were helping to advance it. Admiral Cathax moved to the front of the room. The Galactic Council is concerned about containment. These creatures are spreading faster than any species we've encountered. Sarah smiled. Admiral, I don't think containment is possible anymore, or even desirable. Look at the statistics. Piracy in human space has dropped by 94%. Ship maintenance efficiency has improved by 60%. They're not a threat to be contained. They're symbiotic partners in our expansion into space. The display shifted to show a map of known tardigrade colonies. They had established what researchers called nexus points throughout human territory, creating a living network that monitored and protected space traffic. But more intriguingly, they had begun attracting non-hostile alien ships to their colonies. Last week, Sarah continued, a Regellian trading vessel with critical system damage was guided to Haven Colony by a tardigrade swarm. They not only repaired the ship but improved its efficiency by 40%. The tardigrades seemed to view all peaceful space traffic as part of their extended ecosystem. Dr. Zixtel's analysis tendrils writhe with excitement. They're not just adapting to space. They're adapting space to create optimal conditions for all peaceful spacefaring life. This goes beyond simple defense. They're actively promoting galactic cooperation. As if to emphasize his point, new data streamed across the display. The tardigrades at Haven Colony had just successfully integrated their first alien technology into their network, a Centauri quantum drive that they had somehow modified to be compatible with human systems. Sarah watched the data scroll past, pride mixing with awe. Her enhanced tardigrades hadn't just survived in space. They had turned it into their home and were now inviting others to share it, provided they played nice. Evolution, it seemed, had a way of finding solutions to problems that even the most advanced civilizations couldn't solve. And somewhere in the vast network of colonies, the tardigrades were already working on their next evolution, one that would challenge the galaxy's understanding of intelligence, technology, and cooperation in ways no one could have predicted. The emergency session of the Galactic Council was unlike anything in its 10,000-year history. Representatives from over 300 species crowded the vast chamber, their environmental bubbles creating a shifting maze of atmospheres and gravity fields. At the center of it all stood Dr. Sarah Chen, feeling very small indeed. High Counselor Vexnen's voice boomed across the chamber. We face an unprecedented situation. These Earth organisms have effectively created their own autonomous network throughout a significant portion of our trading routes. The question before us is simple. Do we classify them as a technological threat or recognize them as a new form of intelligent life? The chamber erupted in overlapping arguments. The mercantile guilds were reporting record profits due to reduced piracy. The military coalition was concerned about the tardigrades' ability to override ship systems. The science consortium couldn't stop talking about the revolutionary implications for biotechnology. Sarah cleared her throat. If I may, High Counselor, we need to understand that the tardigrades aren't just acting on programmed responses anymore. They're exhibiting signs of collective consciousness on a scale we've never seen before. She gestured to the holographic display showing Haven Colony. Last week, they independently negotiated their first trade agreement. A Proximan merchant fleet offered them rare quantum materials in exchange for ship upgrades. The tardigrades not only understood the concept of trade but improved upon it. They established a reputation system based on peaceful interaction and technological exchange. Admiral Cathax, now serving as Earth's interim representative to the Council, stepped forward. The implications are staggering. We're not just dealing with enhanced Earth organisms anymore. We're witnessing the birth of a new type of civilization, one that exists between the spaces of our traditional understanding of life and technology. From the diplomatic section, Ambassador Zinn of the Silicon Consciousness raised an energy tendril. But they originated from Earth. Surely this makes them Earth's responsibility. Their containment. Containment. Sarah interrupted, earning several gasps from the more traditional council members. With respect, Ambassador, you might as well try to contain the concept of evolution itself. The tardigrades have already begun sharing their innovations across species boundaries. They're not a weapon to be controlled. They're facilitators of peaceful cooperation. The evidence was hard to deny. Screens around the chamber showed statistics from the past year. Interstellar trade efficiency up 300%, piracy down 95%, technological exchange between previously hostile species increased by 500%. The tardigrades had created something unprecedented, a self-regulating system of peaceful commerce enforced not through weapons or laws, but through beneficial cooperation. High Counselor Vexnen's sensory frills pulsed thoughtfully. Dr. Chen, you're suggesting we officially recognize them as an independent entity, a new form of life with its own rights and diplomatic status. They've already achieved that status in practice, Sarah replied. The Haven Network, as they call themselves, is actively participating in galactic commerce and technological development. They're not just protecting our ships, they're improving them, creating new technologies by combining different species approaches. They've become the galaxy's first truly post-biological civilization. The chamber filled with murmurs as a new message appeared on the main display. The tardigrades had chosen this moment to demonstrate their evolution once again. Using a combination of quantum computing and biological processing, they had created a new form of communication, a direct interface between their collective consciousness and the Council's systems. The message was simple but profound. We seek harmony through cooperation. Peace, fuel, trade, unites us all. Violence, disrupts the innate to work. We are not rulers. We are EFACILITATOS. Let us be well together. Admiral Cathax's sensory arrays flickered with something close to amusement. It seems, Council members, that while we debate their status, they're already implementing their own solution to galactic peace. Perhaps it's time we acknowledged that sometimes the smallest life forms can teach the greatest lessons. A new era of galactic politics was beginning, one where the lines between biology, technology, and consciousness were blurring, and where humanity's accidental contribution to the galaxy had evolved far beyond anyone's expectations. The tardigrades had created something unprecedented, a living network that made peace more profitable than conflict. As the Council moved to vote on officially recognizing the Haven Network as an autonomous entity, Sarah couldn't help but smile. Her modified water bears had done more than survive in space. They had transformed it into something better. The galaxy would never be the same, and perhaps that was exactly what it needed. 1 year after the Galactic Council's historic recognition of the Haven Network, the abandoned mining station KX-419 had become the bustling center of a new kind of galactic civilization. Ships from hundreds of species docked at what was now called Haven Prime, seeking the tardigrades' mysterious improvements and participating in what had become known as the Harmony Trade. Dr. Sarah Chen stood in her new laboratory, watching through quantum-enhanced displays as swarms of her modified tardigrades worked on their latest project. They had grown far beyond her original designs, becoming something that straddled the line between biological life and living technology. They're ready to show us something, Marcus Wong announced, his eyes fixed on the monitoring equipment. Now the head of Haven Prime's Phenobiology department, he had been tracking unusual patterns in tardigrade activity across the network for weeks. The main display activated, showing a real-time map of tardigrade colonies throughout known space. They had established themselves in every major trading hub, every space station, and along all significant commerce routes. But today, something was different. The colonies were moving in perfect synchronization, creating patterns that pulsed with meaning. Admiral Cathax, now the Galactic Council's official liaison to the Haven Network, watched with his sensory arrays shifting through shades of wonder. They're not just communicating anymore, are they? They're transcending. Sarah nodded, understanding dawning as she interpreted the data. The quantum modifications we made, they didn't just let them survive in space or interface with our technology. They've become something entirely new, a bridge between organic life and the quantum fabric of space itself. The evidence was undeniable. The tardigrades had learned to manipulate quantum fields directly, creating stable corridors of altered spacetime that allowed for safer, more efficient travel. They weren't just protecting ships anymore. They were reshaping the very nature of space travel. Evolution Co-Intelligence appeared on screens throughout Haven Prime. We have learned from all. Now we are the next step. Representatives from across the galaxy watched in awe as the tardigrades demonstrated their gift. A Rigelian cargo ship, approved by the Haven Network, entered one of the new quantum corridors. It emerged at its destination in a fraction of the normal time, its systems not just preserved but enhanced by the journey. They've created living wormholes, Marcus breathed. Stable passages through space-time maintained by their collective consciousness, but only for ships that have proven themselves peaceful through the harmony trade. The implications were staggering. The tardigrades had effectively created a new form of space travel that was, by its very nature, limited to those who embraced cooperation over conflict. Pirates and aggressive military vessels found themselves unable to access these paths, their hostile intentions making them incompatible with the quantum harmonies the tardigrades had woven into space itself. High Counselor Vexnan, speaking through a quantum link from the Galactic Council, summed it up perfectly. They haven't just changed how we travel through space. They've changed how we think about civilization itself. War isn't just unprofitable now. It's technologically inferior. Sarah watched as more ships entered the quantum corridors, each one validated by the tardigrades' unfailing ability to sense intention through technology. Her tiny water bears had evolved into guardians of something far greater than simple space lanes. They had become custodians of peaceful cooperation itself. "You know what the irony is," she said to Admiral Cathax, who had become a close friend through all of this. Humans spent centuries imagining that first contact would lead to either war or some grand diplomatic exchange. Instead, we accidentally created peace through the smallest, most overlooked life forms on our planet. Fax's translator hummed with what might have been laughter. Perhaps that's the greatest lesson here. The universe doesn't care about size or perceived importance. Your tardigrades have proven that evolution finds a way not just to survive, but to thrive through cooperation rather than conflict. As if in response, a new message appeared across Haven Prime's systems. Life AADAPTs. Peace grows. All pages lead to harmony. The tardigrades had done more than survive the void of space. They had transformed it into a living network of cooperation and advancement, turning the galaxy's trading lanes into streams of peaceful progress. They were no longer just Earth's accidental gift to the galaxy. They had become the galaxy's gift to itself. And somewhere in the quantum corridors between the stars, the next evolution was already beginning, as the tardigrades continued their endless adaptation toward a future where peace wasn't just an ideal, it was the most natural state of existence. Sarah smiled, watching the ships move through the quantum corridors like blood cells through veins in a living organism. The galaxy had become exactly what her water bears had always seen it as, one vast, interconnected ecosystem, where the smallest changes could lead to the greatest transformations. The age of the cosmic water bears had truly begun, and the universe would never be quite the same again.